Hi, everybody. I'm David Paparelli, co-founder of M-Cultivo, and welcome back to the Cupping Table podcast, where the best coffee producers and buyers share their stories, insights, and outlook on the specialty coffee space. Our guest today is Gilbert Gatali. He is the executive director of the Africa Fine Coffee Association. He is relaunching the Taste of Harvest competitions and auctions, and he is a coffee producer himself in Rwanda. So Gilbert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. It's my pleasure to be with you here today.
So I like to start these things off just with a hopefully an easier question. But you're at home in Kigali now, and I'd be curious on what's the best cup of coffee that you've had recently.
Oof. That's the easy question.
It should be. It could be the one this morning. But yeah, some people do have. It's like, and it's crazy. Recently, I guess is the
operative word here, right? Interestingly, it was last week. I had a great espresso shot from Ethiopia, Yirgashefe, at the SCTA conference in Switzerland. That's an easy one.
I've probably done. This might be the 40th episode I've done of these. I'm not quite sure how many in we are, but somewhere around that. And I think you are the first person ever who's mentioned an espresso as their favorite cup of coffee they've ever had.
I mean, you said recently. not So recently was the operative word, and I tend not. I mean, usually my response to that question would be a filtered coffee, but this coffee, yeah. I mean, I actually, when I asked for it, I was asking for a cappuccino, but I misunderstood. Like I think the barista misunderstood, and he just gave me an espresso shot, and I tasted it, and I was like, whoa, this is great. This is very tasty, and so it stuck with me. So recently, that was the best.
I do kind of tend to agree with you on that. I mean, I feel like, and I don't know why this is, but I do feel like espresso is higher risk. It's kind of high risk, high reward. So if you get an amazing espresso, you're going to be blown away by it. But it's so often just going to be mediocre or not very good at all. Whereas with a filter coffee, you kind of fall into a tighter range. You can have the best filter coffee. It can be amazing. But it's probably, as long as the coffee's good, it's probably not going to be atrocious. And so you tend to, if you really want to try coffees, you tend to get filters, or I do. But I don't know if this has got to be, I mean, you're traveling a whole bunch. I mean, you must be drinking a lot of espresso as you're moving around the world. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, so in all honesty, I tend not to take espresso shots. It's not my preferred. If I'm going to do something espresso based, I prefer with milk. And the main reason is because I tend not to get very good espresso shots. So the default is add milk, and it's going to be good. So the filter coffee is really where you get to really enjoy a cup of coffee. And while I like coffee, I'm also not like a coffee snob, right? I probably, if I need a cup of coffee, I'll drink coffee. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, this is, like, I don't travel with my own coffee and my own hand, grinder and the whole, like, so I sort of appreciate take coffee as it's presented. And it, if I enjoy it, great. If I don't, then leave with, okay, I'll just get a better one another time. But luckily, a lot of my travel is coffee based. So you tend to end up in a place where people are preparing good coffees. So there's always a good cup of coffee at some point on any of the trips that I make.
Yeah, it does kind of encourage kind of some coffee snobbery with the places you visit, the producers you get to visit, the types of coffees you get to have. But like you said, you've got 3 kids. I mean, there's an efficiency thing to coffee too, right? I've got a little one at home, and it's just sometimes you just need some caffeine. So that's important, and sometimes even more important than the taste.
Exactly. Yeah, because you don't always have the time to be able to like prepare it the way you want to prepare it or choose. So like this morning, I had a great cup of Burundian coffee that I brought from Burundi a few weeks ago, and it was. Was good. It was French press is my preferred way of preparing coffees, and I was alone, and I had a nice cup of Burundian coffee. It was nice. Now all
Can't get
this
any
talk, I
better
feel
than
like I
that.
should go make a cup.
Yeah, no, I usually have a cup of coffee with me, and I don't today. I think we were both rushing to this, so
Yes.
maybe afterwards. But it's getting a little late for a cup of coffee, at least for me. So, but I want to get into some of your background, Gilbert, because I
Hmm.
mean, the recent highlights of you becoming executive director of AFCA and relaunching Taste of Harvest. We'll absolutely get into that, but I'd love to hear just a little bit about how you got into coffee. You moved from Canada back to Rwanda and all things that you've started. Why make that move? Why get back into coffee?
It's probably so about what is it 19, 18 years ago, 2006 thereabouts. I got into coffee accidentally, completely accidentally. I was living in Toronto, no, Edmonton, Canada. And I'd made a decision to move to Rwanda just because I'm originally from here, but I'd never lived in Rwanda, and I wanted to come and experience home and what that meant, and explore the opportunities that Rwanda presented for me as a young professional. But also just for me to be able to, there's a sense of feeling like I could contribute towards the development of my home country. So that was the desire, or the motivation to move to Rwanda. Then right, maybe a month or two before I moved, my sister, who was living in Japan, had met David Griswold, who owned Sustainable Harvest. And Sustainable Harvest at that time used to buy coffee, and probably still buys coffee, from Rwanda. And they were looking to have somebody work with them. And my sister sort of told David Griswold, "Oh, my brother is moving to Rwanda. He doesn't know anything about coffee, but you should meet him. I think he's a great guy." So David and I met, and I was offered the opportunity to come and open the Sustainable Harvest East Africa office.
Mm.
And so that's how I got into coffee. So at that point, I drank coffee, but I didn't know much about coffee. Meeting David Griswold and Sustainable Harvest, and understanding the relationship coffee model that Sustainable Harvest was about, really got me intrigued and interested in, probably, in all honesty, I was more interested in the people behind the coffee, and cooperatives, probably more
Hmm.
so than coffee itself. My education background is in international development and social cultural anthropology. So my pull was always on people and culture and society, and how, then coffee on this end allowed me to be able to see what business can be used,
Did you
how business
know?
can be used.
Did you know
Go ahead.
anything about business in East Africa at that time? I mean, were you? I mean, how
Yeah,
early
no,
on in
not
this on
business.
your career was this?
I'd finished university. I'd probably worked for about 2 years, a year, almost 2 years. I hadn't worked. I hadn't done business. I didn't know much about business. I'd done social services work, HIV/AIDS work. So that aspect is what was interesting for me. But I had done some work in Tanzania, so I'd worked in Tanzania for some time before I moved to Rwanda. And there it was, work that was not corporate at all. So my interest, actually, when I was moving to Rwanda, was to explore the opportunities. It wasn't to do coffee or even work with cooperatives, for that matter. But there was always been that, because of international development, I was always interested in working with rural development, understanding populations that were trying to evolve and change their livelihoods. So that's really what my interest was. It's just now business in this case, but I mean, I'd always been interested in business as well. Like, to understand it, be a part of it, but the opportunity never presented itself. So when I got introduced to Sustainable Harvest, it was a perfect mix of the relationship coffee model, and working with coffee producers allowed for me to touch upon that part. But then this other interest in business presented itself through being able to trade coffee, and use that as a bridge or as a vehicle to impact change. So it ended up being a perfect mix. Um, so that's how I
And
got into
David
coffee.
and Sustainable Harvest and David Griswold at the time. I mean, that company obviously grew tremendously, but this must have been early days for them.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't early days because I suspect they were probably 10 years old then.
Okay,
So
so I
they were,
guess
they,
that
I
would
mean,
be
they've
my
been,
sort of the question on that then, right? Is like, why would they? Why? I mean, you seem like a great guy and all, but why hire
thanks.
Gilbert to head up East African? This seems like such an amazing opportunity, but it's sort of a huge risk for Sustainable Harvest and the relationships that they were hoping to foster. I mean, why do you think they invested in you for this role?
Because I'm a great guy.
Yeah, because you're a great guy. That could be it. I mean, sometimes it does just come to that. Hey, I met David, and he really liked me. That's
Yeah,
why.
I actually think that's what it was. He and I met, and it was like the longest job interview because he ended up inviting me to Portland, and I ended up like staying in his basement for a week. And I thought I was gonna be like in for a few days, and we'll just like meet. But ended up staying in his basement. And we just really hit it off. And I got to meet. They were opening their Peru office at that time, so all the staff from Peru had come out. Folks from Mexico had come out. So um, I think we really just hit it off. I think David felt good about my interest, who I was, but um, and really my I guess I had a good rapport with the team from Mexico and the team from
Mm-hmm.
Peru. And initially, it wasn't like, okay, here we're setting up a whole office. It was more, they were already doing business in East Africa. They were working with a USAID project from Rwanda that they were buying coffee from. So I think it was also an easy transition into saying, Gilbert, you're going to Rwanda anyway. So it wasn't like they were hiring me to go to Rwanda. I had already bought my
Right.
ticket. I was moving to Rwanda. So it was like, you're going to be there. Can you help us um be our liaison between the cooperatives that we're buying from and be able to feed us with the information that we need. And so I think it was a very soft landing. I don't think it needed to, I didn't need to be an experienced coffee trader. One of the first tasks that I found myself doing when I arrived was, I typed a whole list of coffee farmers for Koa Kaka Cooperative that needed to get fair trade certification. So it was
Yeah.
just with laptop, and we needed to get the certification. We needed to type that list and give all that information. So it was very it was stuff that didn't necessarily need coffee experience per se, but it needed that ability to be able to. And I spoke a bit of Kinyarwanda. I spoke Kiswahili. So the idea for Sustainable Harvest was to expand into East Africa, beyond Rwanda, because there was already established businesses in Rwanda, and they were buying from Ethiopia at that time, but nothing from Kenya or Tanzania at that time. So the idea was at least represent us in Rwanda and then explore the region. So I think it was
Yeah.
probably an investment, and if things don't work out, at least we would
Yeah.
move
It's
a couple of containers from Rwanda, and then we'll
and we get a
hire
list
someone
of
else to
farmers
come.
on an Excel
Right.
spreadsheet
Well,
that
yeah,
needs
exactly.
fair trade certification. Yeah.
Then we'll get
Uh,
fair trade certified, and we'll just hire somebody more experienced and senior, and then you can work with them, sort of thing. So I think we hit it off. I think it was probably uh, not as a major investment in us. Like I really would have had to screw it up. Like I would have had to do something really bad to screw up that like it was,
yeah.
it was a great
Well, and
experience.
the role. I mean, I don't know if the title at the very beginning was head of East Africa office for Sustainable Harvest, but you sort of, you start you get to work on a task. I think we talked to our team about this as well, and when we're looking at hiring people, it is kind of it's hard to teach passion on any level, right? So your personal mission to form solid relationships and help develop Rwanda at a time where it does seem like it was on its way up, right? And kind of step into that and help foster that growth. And then with coffee, we run into this all the time, right? I mean, can you teach people coffee? Can you teach people the coffee thing? Can I teach somebody to make a French press at home every single day? Probably not. I mean, it's not something you get. It's something that you kind of fall in love with over time, I think, and you get into it.
Exactly, and really, my title was relationship coffee manager, right? So that was my title for East Africa, and that was, I made sure that we had a good relationship with the cooperatives. Information was flowing from the co-op to the buyer, and great relationship with the roasters that we were working with. If they were coming, organize cupping, organize visits, be able to explain what the situation is, so that there's just a facilitation between these two groups of people. And I think in my situation, I was privileged enough to have two worlds, right? I'm Rwandan, even though I hadn't lived, but I, understood the culture, understood the language, spoke it. And then I also understood the buyers, and were able to do that. So I think that just naturally happened, and then strengthened that relationship to then be able to understand some of the trades and stuff like that. So
besides sort of the tactical things that went along with that position, what were some of the key learnings you had in that sustainable harvest time?
wow, a number of stuff. Patience, number one. I think there was a complete disconnect between suppliers, coffee producers, and roasters and buyers. Disconnect in a sense that simple stuff like, people were expecting, emails to be responded to within hours, or if you are looking for a sample, that it should just be, we asked for a sample, you should be able to get it the next day, kind of thing. So I think understanding that some of these things take a lot longer and takes a lot more than you expect, especially when you're sitting in Portland or California, and somebody's sitting in Remera sector of Nyamasheke district or something like that. So I think that was probably one of the first things, is being able to bridge that to say, okay, it doesn't work like that, and it's not necessarily an excuse, it's a reality. And so being able to then offer the opportunity for mainly buyers to come and see that reality, and then be able to turn that around to also speak with producers to say, okay, the expectation is also this. So we could also be making changes to allow for this to happen. So I think that facilitation would probably be one of the things.
Before you move on that, are you seeing that improve over the years, or is that cultural dissonance still alive and well, and it just requires folks like a relationship manager to help kind of translate and figure out how to bridge that gap? Effectively, I feel like the world's become a smaller place with technology, right? Over that 20-year period, for sure. I mean, our ability to do this while you're in Kigali and I'm in London is amazing. But, do you still have a lot of that, hey, a sample should have arrived within 24 hours and this email needs to be responded to? And that's just not the way it works.
So I think improvement, yes, but I think while technology and changes have happened, you also have new people coming into this space, right? I mean, last week I met somebody who I was inviting to come to the AFCA conference in Ethiopia, and he was just like, "No, but I can't go." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "But there's a war in Ethiopia, and there's, I haven't been to Africa, and I'm scared." And this is somebody who owns a coffee company and imports tens of containers, and he was asking me to introduce him to producers in East Africa, and I was like, I'd be more than happy to do that, but why don't you come and meet all of them? Sorry, not all of them, but as many of them as possible. And his response was, I can't come to Africa. So that in itself shows you, I mean, yes, that's probably not everybody, but that's just one who was able to say that out loud. So I think there's improvement, more so for those who have been around and are doing it and are, but you also have a lot of new people getting into the coffee, because now you also have a lot of folks who are using social media to get into coffee. You have a lot of people who are roasting at home. So it's a different group. So as much as there's improvement, it's for those that have been around, but you also have a lot of these other newer folks who aren't as understanding or aren't as exposed. And similarly on the maybe you don't have as many new producers coming in, because most producers are probably there and doing it longer, but you do have some that are making opportunistic decisions as a business decision, but they're probably, if you're making that as a business decision, you're usually probably a little bit more exposed. the understandings, the nuances of you know, some of the disconnect today is, processing and working with countries to think about different processings as a way to be able to position coffees, because things are changing. And so those are some of the changes that are happening now, where people are like, what? We have washed coffees. What is honey? What is infused? What is natural? Like, how do we even like grade this? So I think those are some of the changes now that you're starting to see. And with those innovations or evolvements that need to be able to still explain to somebody, because they're like, no, I just want to be able to get this, but like, no, you actually need a separate license to be able to get a different type of coffee that this producer has not been producing, or this country has been known to produce.
It seems like in that sort of communication, the easiest thing to do, or has been in the past, and is you build these brands, right? Um, and this is sort of part of, Rwanda's got a coffee brand, Uganda's got a coffee brand. So you had these country brands that said, okay, Brazilian coffee, that should be known, or Colombia coffee, that should be Juan Valdez on his donkey bringing coffee down the mountain, right? Um, so these brands get developed, and it sort of shortcuts some of the communication around this in the coffee space of, well, why should you buy Rwandan coffee? Well, because it's just really good coffee. Haven't you seen all the investment we've done in the Rwandan coffee brand and what we've been able to do? And I think AFCA sort of developed alongside some of those challenges, where it seems like AFCA's job is to kind of foster some of these brand elements for these countries and promote the purchase of coffee and communicate that. But you also have this unique challenge, because I think today, in that bridging of communication gap, is so much more complicated, because individual producers are building their own brands, right? And so when you're talking about processing method, it's not just about the processing methods that are occurring in that country, but it's, Marajo Trading Company in Rwanda is doing these kinds of processing methods, and they need to be able to communicate those and foster that. How does, I know we're jumping ahead here, but how does AFCA fit into that equation? How do you guys work to kind of foster that communication in those brands?
I think for us as AFCA, first we sort of take an aerial view on this. And, it's very difficult to start getting into the individual companies' brands that are our members. And I think we're probably not even best positioned to do that, because that's their job and that's their brand. So I think it's important for us to say that what we do is we create a platform. We create a space for you as our member to position yourself and brand yourself as you see fit. That's the first thing that I see ourselves as AFCA. We probably move more on branding the fact that AFCA and Africa specifically, or using AFCA to brand Africa as a continent that produces some of the best coffees the world has, right? And so I think that's really where we see ourselves, is saying, you know what, if you're thinking of specialty coffee, we know that there's lots of specialty coffees all over, but we want to be able to utilize programs, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this, like the Taste of Harvest, to try to redefine the global perception of the African coffees, right? Like, how do we celebrate the diversity that the African coffees has? How do we elevate that quality? So we're taking a continental approach, obviously, that has individual countries depending on how and when, but the idea is to think of it from a continental approach and not necessarily from an individual. Now we can use, Muraho or Bajo or Mountain Harvest, or any of our members, to highlight that as an example of what a particular producer in a particular country can do, or producers can do. But generally, it is to prove to the world and to remind the world, for those who don't know, introduce them to, for those who know, confirm or affirm, and introduce to a new producer that we have fantastic coffees, and in some cases even introduce new origins that maybe people have not necessarily known as high quality producing countries. So that's how we see it as AFCA, is trying to position ourselves from a continental level, but more importantly, provide the opportunity and the platform for our members who want to exude their brands much much more.
I do wonder on a relational level, I find in coffee, especially B2B. I mean, we're kind of in this business to business sales environment, right? I mean, you're trying to connect producers with roasters, maybe producers with importers or exporters with importers. It might be as simple as that, right? Um, and you take these continental approach and these strategies around framing Africa as a great place to buy great coffee. But you also have a guy like you just mentioned who might be a roaster and it just wants intros to a bunch of African producers. I just want to buy more African coffee. At the end of the day, what's the most efficient way to do that? And for me, Africa, my view of African coffee is Gilbert. Gilbert is my guy. He's what I know about Africa coffee. He's my guy. I'm going to call him. I'm going to ask for interest to these African producers. I wonder how I'm always curious in coffee where it is so relational. If, all these brand strategies and all these things that we're doing just really boil down to, hey, there's 100 coffee producers out there in Africa that are members of AFCA, and then there's 100 roasters in our network, and we're just going to do our best to connect the two. And the easiest way to do that is with AFCA as kind of a platform in the middle. But AFCA itself, I mean, you don't have 500 employees, so it's like it just becomes very relationship forward. I wonder if you're experiencing that, if that's been a through line for you, or if it really does feel more political and brand building and that sort of thing. Just which side of that spectrum do you guys seem to fall on?
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally, coffee is a very relational business, right? Like you, in my days of exporting coffees, I can't tell you how many times I've managed to get a sale because somebody introduced me, and just that person introducing me to a roaster or an importer, because of the relationship that they have, naturally just says, okay, you know what, I can do business with Gilbert because this guy's introduced me. It's completely relational. Like this person I'm talking to you about that I met last week, who's interested in Africa. Once he said that to me, I was like, no, really, don't be scared. It's fine. And he said, okay, but the person that introduced you to me, because we were introduced, I really respect. If he thinks you're a person that I should talk to, then if you make this invitation and you're firm that things are going to be okay, I will take my chance and come to the conference. It's not because he thinks, whatever I said is true. It's because whoever introduced us is who he believes is the person to trust, and then I'll need now to build that trust with him when he comes to the conference, and then from that relationship builds. So it's completely, I mean, not completely, but majority of it is relation, especially when you're looking at the specialty part of the business. I mean, there's traders who are looking at price and looking at bigger traders, and so for them it's very transactional, but even then it's still very relation. So we see that, and you're right, and so for us as AFCA, obviously is we don't have 500 employees, and the truth is we're also, while we do a lot of access to market and B2B business, not the only thing that we do. So if we are able to have this gentleman come to the conference and have him participate at a B2B cupping, then we would have fulfilled that mission. Or in this case, earlier this morning, I had a call with another importer that's interested in East Africa. And I said, okay, if you're coming, let's just organize a cupping for you in Uganda. He's coming to Uganda. And so we'll invite our members, they'll bring their samples, and you'll get a moment to meet 5-10 of them. And we allow for that. So we've sort of, and I guess there's an understanding that if we have invited these people and we invited him, that relationship exists between us, and hopefully it goes well. And then they'll say, you know what, Gilbert, Uganda worked well. Can you do something similar for us as AFCA in Tanzania or Zambia or somewhere else? So and hopefully we do a bit more of those in our access to market as an organization, without necessarily having to be the individual within the organization that has to do, because we're not traders, we're just facilitating these relationships, and hopefully we get into we get better at it, utilizing the network that we have within our membership base and all of these other potential buyers that we have. But we do tend to move into that. They may not move, but it is relation. Just to answer your questions, it's more relationship than the alternative.
Yeah, the trade facilitation piece where it's ultimately going to be between two people, right? I mean, we like to think these big businesses are, these amoebas and they just kind of magically do business together or whatever. But it generally comes down to, well, I know Gilbert on one end. It was a good introduction. I trust this guy because I trust the guy that introduced me, and I need coffee. That's what I need. So, David's going to call Gilbert. Gilbert's going to find coffee and then sell that coffee to David. And that's a relationship between two people that hopefully forms and grows. You were in the export role in Rwanda for quite some time under your own company, right? Did some vertical integration, dry mill, wet mill. I would be curious on, there's a particular kind of skill set and number of learnings, and you kind of are, for lack of a better term, a god of in your own world, right? In when you're running an export operation and doing your own thing, obviously it's not that simple and not that easy. But what kind of skill sets or learnings have transitioned from that export role over to executive director of AFCA, and kind of what are you learning, or what's been really hard to learn kind of in this new executive director role where you're kind of representing an entire continent in the coffee space?
So learnings in running export businesses and operations. I mean, it's hard to bring it down to one or two, but lots of learnings, right? One is business models, financing business models, that just making sure you're well capitalized should be able to run an export business. So I think that was probably the biggest learning, is the kind of um, need to have the right capital for growth or working capital, or so I think that was probably the biggest learning, because we were doing a lot of coffee at that time. um and prices were changing, the market. When you're doing price risk management is a pain in the neck when you're when you don't have the right instruments, not right, not even have the right knowledge to understand how that's done when you're a small and medium enterprise, and you're growing, and you're needing to understand how to protect your stocks. So I would say that probably would be the second learning.
You're
I mean,
really a long way from social sciences and international development at that point, right? It's like, oh, when did I
right,
become a banker?
exactly, right. And you're just trying to understand that stuff, and then you go all the way to the other end, which is production, and you're just like, what? Like, the drying isn't happening. It's you're like understanding quality, and processing, and so it's I mean, you're literally just going like this, right? You're trying to understand, because all of it is interlinked. It's not like,
Right.
we just bought whatever tons of coffees, and we'll have a buyer for it. It's like, no, you like the timing. You have this much stock. Have you found a buyer? At which point do you make that sale, because the prices are dropping? So I mean, at that point we had, I don't know, at 75 staff. So human resources, it's just like, you just name it, it's coming at you. So the learnings are
Did any of that transition to executive director of AFCA though? I mean, other than just, hey, I have to be super resilient and learn a lot of things very quickly. I mean, did was there more than that came over to this executive director role?
yeah, I think so. I think there's a few things that come once, I mean, coming to AFCA. One is, AFCA is primarily a coffee organization, right? So there's a need to understand coffee. And I think that export experience with working with producers,
Mm-hmm.
I think gives a very good basis of understanding coffee and things about coffee. I know most people probably see and hear about AFCA as an organization that organizes a conference, because it's probably the biggest brand that we have. But there was a need for us to bring back coffee as a part of who we are, and the conference is one of the things that we do. So I think the export and coffee background experience allows to bring coffee as a part of what we do at AFCA. So that's the first thing that I think that transition allows. Second is, when you're in my experience, you're managing a lot of relationships. You're managing cooperatives that you're working with. You're managing banks. You're managing buyers, and in our case, we're managing investors. So there's a lot of
A lot of different
stakeholder
stakeholders.
a lot of
Yeah.
stakeholder management and relationships. And so that with time, you learn that and you understand, and there's competing needs at time. So I think that also translates into this role, because similarly, we're a member-based organizations, a sort of organization. So we've got members, and members of different types. You have very small exporters as members, and you have multinationals as members, and you have individual consultants as members, and you have banks and governments as members. So there's lots of stakeholders, and so I think stakeholder management is extremely important. That comes into that, and then I think just overall understanding that when things aren't going very well, they will get better. You know what I mean? So there's just that
Mm-hmm.
that you the resilience. You've been there, you've seen it, you've experienced it, you've managed individuals and stakeholders. So when you're running an organization like AFCA that is challenged financially, that is challenged in so many different ways, the team needs to know that there's a vision, there's a mission, and we're going to work towards it. And it's not the end of the world today. And so I think sometimes people need to your team needs to feel that confidence, but your partners need to feel that confidence as well, because everybody's making some kind of an investment in this. And I think there's a need to be able to just assure and look at, obviously the other transition is, while you know that and you're resilient, you get creative in finding solutions to problems, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're working with an organization like AFCA, there's always some kind of a problem, and a solution will be found. It might not be the best, or it might be the best outcome. Either way, it's not the end of the world. A solution will be found, and we will continue. So I think those are some of the learnings that probably transition into an organization.
Some would call that sort of level-headedness. I mean, you get that from running your own operation, but I think a lot of it's just kind of perspective and experience. You went out. I mean, there's not very many people that at 2 years after university would go out and try and move to East Africa and then try and run their own organization, and then even fewer people that kind of become entrepreneurial to the effect of, I'm going to run my own exporter and that'll grow that organization. You just get a tremendous amount of kind of wisdom, experience, perspective on that. Some of the value is just your ability to make decisions, I would guess. That sort of, I just know what might be the right decision intuitively. But a lot of it might just be exactly what you said, which is, hey, kind of been through worse. I'll probably still go through worse. And this isn't the end of the world. And tomorrow we're going to wake up and we'll get back to work. So every day I wake up and I go to work. That's what I do. Right. And your team needs that.
Exactly. I mean, and lots of privilege on my end, that to be exposed to all of these different things, right? And so and you're and really the ability to be able to create a space for people to work with you so that they can reach their potential. And I think that's a very big opportunity that we are probably preparing and offering and have had in my past experience and currently, so that team feels and thinks that, okay, if this guy thinks things are going to be okay, I mean, who am I to think it's not going to be okay? You know what I mean? Like, I'll just have to blindly trust this guy. But no, I mean, and I say that jokingly, but I think that's important to be able to create that comfort for folks, and for yourself, having a good board, and so those are all the transitions that we were talking about. But yeah, the privilege of that exposure, that experience really helps in that ability to be level-headed and just weather the storm when there is a storm.
It's a really great way of putting it. And the other thing I like what you said is, AFCA is a coffee organization. It's not a political organization. Trade facilitation is obviously part of it, but it's primarily people and coffee. And I think that's, when you boil it down, it's really simple. One thing I found with coffee producers, and I know I'm sure you're in this camp, but I to run it by you, is if you hire someone outside of coffee into a coffee environment, coffee producers can kind of smell BS very quickly. And coffee people like to be around other coffee people. There's a shorthand. There's a language that they speak. It's not necessarily just English and Kenya Rwanda. It's kind of this deeper level of understanding of how supply chains, the complexity of it, how coffee gets produced, all of these things. You live through that, having that shorthand in a second language. I can't imagine somebody in your position who doesn't have that being as effective with arguably the most meaningful members, which is going to be your coffee producers around Africa, right? The guys who actually make the coffee happen so the rest of us can enjoy it and actually have a business around it.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the beautiful things about coffee is a lot of people who, and in this case, I'm going to not talk about the farmers themselves, but other people like myself who get into coffee as an exporter, as an importer, as a roaster, tend to get into coffee almost by choice. You know what I mean? Like you accidentally get into it. Maybe you don't necessarily get into it
Wow. Yeah.
by choice, but you get into it maybe accidentally or by choice, but you stay by choice because you usually have other alternatives. But so it creates a different kind of group of people, right? Now, I took out farmers for a second just because a lot of farmers are probably not in coffee by choice, and they're the ones who stay in coffee because they need to stay in coffee. It's a part of what their families before them did, or it's the whatever product, it's the commodity that brings in capital. So it creates a very good space because you have these people who are in it by choice, so there's a lot of passion, and so like you said, they want to be around each other. And then you've got this other group that might not necessarily be in it by choice, but this is what they do and this is what they've done and have done it for a long time and understand it, and so they will smell that BS real quickly. But they're also usually, everywhere you go in the world, coffee producers and farmers and co-ops are probably the most welcoming people because they just want to share this great product that they have, and they see an opportunity for somebody else to appreciate it and take it. And so it's there's challenges. I don't want to say there aren't, but there's most of the time, if the space allows, it's very harmonious. It's just and I think in our situation, at least specifically in my situation and AFCA, is having that understanding, having that experience allows for me or for us to be able to advocate from a better understanding for our members. Because if people are making maybe remarks or challenges that they're experiencing, not to excuse it, but you're probably in a better position to explain it or look at it from a different angle, because you've lived it, you've experienced it. You're again, you're constantly playing this facilitator, but you're doing it with folks that might understand it a little bit more because you're able to explain it in a language that they understand. So there is, this language, there's the language of coffee itself. So all of those do play into how you position yourself, in our case, AFCA, to be able to advocate for our members in a way that comes from a stronger foundation based on experience.
Also, the ability, if I'm hearing this right, the ability to get to the core, the deeper, more fundamental issue a lot faster, right? Be able to identify that. And then the ability to have people trust you to the effect to allow you to get to that deeper issue and give honest feedback in the process so you can actually do your job better as a representative. I mean, if you can never get to those fundamental issues and people have this sort of surface level, very hospitable, but very surface level, hey, everything needs to look great when Gilbert shows up because, and then as soon as he leaves, everything's going to go to hell. I mean, just this kind of mentality of keeping everything very surface level, I would imagine you'd have the ability to get beyond that pretty quickly with the people that you have as members, and other people just wouldn't be able to do that without your experience. So I think I appreciate that as well. And I know you're probably too humble to say that, so I'll say it for you. But I did want to talk about Taste of Harvest a
All right.
little bit
Okay.
because this is the big, this is what brought us together in more of a, I guess it's business relationship, was Taste of Harvest and being able to put on these amazing competitions and put on these amazing auctions that are upcoming. I want to ask you, what is, what kind of this, I don't know what you would even call this, rejuvenation, re-engaging Taste of Harvest. I mean, how would you describe what Taste of Harvest is, and why are you kickstarting it or taking it to the next level now?
Before I answer that question, I want to speak a little bit to the last part of your comment.
Go on.
Yeah, I think it's also extremely important, as you're saying, that you can get a little deeper. It's important to humble ourselves to say, like we started off saying, coffee is very relationship, right? And so in any relationship, there's vulnerability if you allow for that relationship to actually matter. And that sometimes is, you know what, this didn't work out the way it is, because in coffee business, things don't work out. It's how you relationships are always great when things are good, you know, but it's you understand that relationship when things don't work out very well. That's when you really get to understand who your partner is on the other end, or they get to understand you. I think a lot of that comes when you're able to be vulnerable and be very transparent to the best of your ability and say, you know what, I screwed up, or you know what, I completely did not see this coming, and you're hoping that that's what you're going to receive on the other end, because just because it's a business relationship, it doesn't mean we all have to be like all, you know what I mean, because reality isn't
Right.
that. And so I think it's just
Right.
important for me to highlight that in a relationship there is that needs to be a bit more transparent, that allows you to be vulnerable, because that just allows for a deeper relationship that makes it potentially even better for the business if you can overcome that part. But so yeah, I
Really
just
well
wanted
said. Yeah,
wanted
really,
to
really well
highlight that.
said. I do have to say too that is you don't see that in many other industries. I think coffee is a special industry for that, and we're very lucky to be part of a space where that vulnerability and that relationship is allowed to be more authentic. Um, and so, yeah, that's very well said.
Right. So Taste of Harvest.
Go for it.
Yeah. So Taste of Harvest. I mean, this is a program that AFCA's had for a long time. And it's we're probably we consider it the Africa's longest standing quality competition by AFCA. Now it I think maybe one time it was taken to an auction that didn't happen as smoothly as it needed to, and I can't remember when. So for us at this point in time, we're once again, like I said earlier, we want a position and we want people to know that AFCA is a coffee organization, right? And primarily a big part of what we do is we connect our members with the market. And one of the best ways, so there's that. There is also the fact that we believe that AFCA, Africa has some of the best coffees in the world. And, we also believe other people have great coffees, but we're in Africa and we want to be able to showcase that. So we see the Taste of Harvest as a way for us to redefine the global perception of what the African coffee is, and there's so much diversity within the continent, and we want to celebrate that, and we want to celebrate the quality that exists within that diversity, and then have the specialty coffee industry say, if you don't have a cup of coffee that is featured as some of the best from Africa, then you're missing out on something. And so,
Mm.
so for us, bringing back the Taste of Harvest currently is to be able to foster and create all of that in a way that connects the buyers with some of the best that the continent has to offer. And we feel and think that competitions and auctions would allow that. At least will open that door for connection, discussions. It's really a way for people to just it's a small window that you get to say, oh my God, wow, I've just tasted some of the best Zambian coffee I've ever had. Zambia has coffee and is this good? Then it allows for that, then it opens you up. So we're really just tickling the buyer's world, the specialty world with what the continent has to offer. One, we also think that, we've never had a Robusta competition, right? So we're introducing that into the specialty world. Say, hold on, Robusta is great. You can get specialty Robusta coffees. So what we're doing different, I think, than what's been done before is we're, really taking this to the next level in the sense that we've built a protocol that allows people to understand the steps that we're using in our competition, so that can be as authentic, as validated by local judges, international judges. There's every single thing we can think about, we've thought about to create that system that allows for the competition to actually stand on its own grounds. I think that's one thing that we're doing as different. Second is actually going to auction with these coffees. So it's no longer just a ceremonial competition. It is a competition that allows for those who win to be able to place their coffees into the market. And I think that's a great value for our members, because it's great to be able to get a plaque that says you were number 1 or number 4. But it's also one thing to be able to affirm that by saying, actually, not only do the judges think your coffee was number 1, number 4, or 3, but the market is also willing to bet on that and actually purchase that coffee. So I think that's what we're taking to the next level, is the actual taking it to market. I think it's probably going to be it probably is the biggest new development, is creating the right foundation of this competition and then taking it to market.
We look at these auctions like this, and that's why we're so excited to be a part of it. So thank you for that opportunity. But we look at these as celebrations as well, right? I mean, this ability, an auction is has this kind of wedding nature to it, where it's tons of preparation, tons of work, all this craziness, and then it's over in 4 hours, right? The auction occurs, it's over in 4, 5, 6 hours, and then everyone's like, well, that was amazing. And then you kind of move on. But without that auction, that sort of apex event, that celebration, that ultimate celebration, I think something's kind of left missing. So I appreciate you guys introducing that into the element. And then I think the other thing is if the goal is trade facilitation, I mean, make an actual transaction happen. So there's a buyer and there's a seller on the other end, and help them form that relationship. And so just appreciate you guys doing that as well. I think that will be impactful and be able to carry to the future in a more sustainable way. I mean, this could keep on going as a revenue generating activity for Africa, for African producers, and all of that's really important too. But those two key elements of celebration and kind of this connection in a real transaction, I think, are huge.
Yeah, and to add to that, one of the things that we want to make sure as AFCA that we do, while the wedding, the ceremony is fantastic and great, and you want that to be, is always keep our eye on the fact that the journey towards that is also just as exciting, because we're also providing an opportunity for local cuppers who have a lot of experience in judging and seeing how they participate in that process, and they get a chance to also cup with international judges, and then creating that space where you're bringing other African judges to come from other countries to also become a part of judging. If you have a judge come from Congo to be a part of a Taste of Harvest Burundi, or you have a judge from Burundi to go to be a part of a Kenyan Taste of Harvest. So also creating an opportunity for all of these young coffee professionals on the continent that might not have had the chance to be able to explore and be exposed. So as much as the celebration at the auction level, and absolutely we're excited and we look forward to that, but we always need to remind ourselves that there's also, it's almost like, like you said, the wedding, there's lots of work being done behind the scenes by people that never get to be seen or known, because on that wedding day you're only looking at the
bride and
groom and bride and the groom. But we want to ensure that we are celebrating all of these other people, because they're contributing so much to what you end up seeing as the final product, whether it's them as farmers, those that are cupping, those that are roasting, those are the all of those folks are contributing to this great ceremony, and all those guys are also moving towards how they find their potential in this journey. So it's important for us to, as AFCA, and for everybody else out there, to know that we're very conscious and cognizant of the fact that it's not just about that that celebration at the auction
Yeah.
level. We're celebrating this whole process.
Right. The importance, it's almost more important the before and after, right? And fostering that community, joining those communities together, just like you would join two families, right? Joining those communities together is such a major part of this. And that's where all the work is. The work isn't on the day. All the work has been
Right.
done at that point, long before that. Um, it's before and after. Um, Africa is a giant continent. What countries are going to be in Taste of Harvest? What can we expect to see over the coming months?
Right. So we've got AFCA as an organization is in 11 countries. But specifically with our currently our ability to be able to take the Taste of Harvest competitions to an auction. We have Burundi that we've just finished. That's coming up. We've got Uganda Robusta, and we'll have Uganda Arabica coming up. We've got Tanzania, both Robusta and Arabica coming up. We've got Kenya coming up, and potentially next year we'll be considering Rwanda, Ethiopia. And so at least those for sure are lined up. And the idea for us is if we're able to get the right resources to be able to have the other 10, to be able to host 10 auctions for the 10 countries. And I know I mentioned that we're 11 countries. The 11th country is South Africa, and it doesn't produce coffee. So 10 countries that are coffee producing is
there's some new species in South Africa. You'll get them on
okay.
board. Yeah.
All right.
I got to get you your first members in South Africa. I've talked to a few folks there doing coffee species.
All right, exactly. So until then, we're looking to do 10, but currently at least 5 of the countries and six of the countries that I've mentioned are the ones that you should all be looking out for.
Amazing. Well, yeah, for everybody who's looking out for these, tasteofharvest.mcultivo.com will bring you directly to the auction page for you to register. I think buyers should register and pay attention to what's going on here. I think it's really exciting. I think it's an excellent way to support AFCA, support the African coffee community at large, and be able to foster that community to kind of take it to the next level for both Arabica and Robusta, which is incredible. These coffees will absolutely be worth trying, at least putting on a cupping table, registering, and seeing what's going on with Africa and African coffees. I think this is so important, more important now, maybe more than ever. With the changing coffee world and environment. So Gilbert, I just want to thank you so much for the time today. So often with these interviews, they go to a place that's so far beyond coffee that kind of gets into community and faith, and there's some sort of element of just this deeper meaning to the whole thing. And I felt that in this interview with you, just the personal mission to kind of develop Rwanda, spreading to all of Africa, staying on that, committed to that personal mission throughout your professional life. That has never, I can tell that's never left you. And I think that's something to be applauded. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to share some of your experience today and what's coming up for Africa and Taste of Harvest.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to have this time with you on this podcast. Thank you and M-Cultivo for partnering with us with this upcoming auction and more to follow and come. We really are, very, very appreciative of this and look forward to doing more together. And yeah, I mean, really, I've been extremely, extremely privileged and lucky to have experienced. Coffee's been good to me, and I have a personal mission to be good to coffee and to be able to have that to as many countries within our region as possible. So yeah, it's been good. It's a good ride. We're excited about the coffees that we are seeing both in Uganda so far that we've had the competition in Burundi. So I think once those sample sets are out, people will get a chance to taste some great coffees, and then hopefully we see that translate into the auctions. I also would like to take this opportunity to remind everybody that we do have the African Fine Coffees Conference happening in Ethiopia in February. Please register at www.afca.coffee conference. We'll be able to get you that link. And because we're talking about Taste of Harvest, what we do have at the conference is all of these individual countries' Taste of Harvest competitions. Now we bring all those coffees at the conference. Now you have a regional competition where we get to see the best coffee out of the continent, out of our members' countries. So this is really where you get to taste the best that the continent has to offer. So I think that would be a fantastic opportunity for those who would be able to come to the conference to be able to taste, see, and celebrate fully the continent's best of the best. So thank you once again to you and for this opportunity, and looking forward to engaging and continuing this collaboration and building this community.
That sounds great. Well, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Gilbert.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.